I learned English. I mean, that's the official language in Nigeria, and in my family we spoke English all the time. My mom was an English teacher, so I would say with oral English, spoken English, definitely from an early age I was able to speak. I was in school from when I was age 2. I learned to talk real fast. I think I was the first to learn to read amongst my brothers and cousins. So I learned to read at a very early age. I cannot say why. It probably came more easily for me. My brothers learning to read was a kind of challenge for my older brother and cousin. And I, being the younger one, got in trouble with them because I would always show off when they were struggling to read. I remember right from an early age was that I loved to read. I loved stories, and so I would read anything and everything that came my way. And of course that translated also into secondary school. So English was something that seemed easy for me, although there were topics that on getting to secondary school, there are topics that one would encounter that no matter how much of a natural English speaker you are, you do still need to learn. Mm-hmm. I remember from age 5 I could read the newspaper. My parents always had newspapers lying around, and I would just read them. Going into primary school, I loved Enid Blyton. I read every single Enid Blyton book I could lay my hands on. We had a lot of British influence, so there were a lot of those kinds of books around us. Yeah, also there were magazines. We had encyclopedias in my grandma's house that when we were bored, we would just look through. So I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of material from an early age. Mm-hmm. I had a good experience with English. I was able to understand very easily. No, English was not my favorite subject because, like I said, there are parts of English that one had to learn that are not the normal spoken English, oral English that you and I would speak today. Things like lexis and structure, conjugation, the way grammar is twisted in different ways. So those were really challenging because it was like a different way, having to force yourself to think in a different way about something you've always known. Well, definitely all we had were textbooks. So we just kept trying to understand the textbooks. Our teachers tried to help us understand. But I think it was even more challenging to have to twist something that you think you already know and look at it in a different way. Topics like the lexis and structure. When you talk of first person singular, past and present participles, things like that, they're not natural ways of thinking or talking. My favorite was reading and comprehension because I love to read, and comprehension because there were always questions about the text afterward, which was pretty interesting. I love puzzles, I love mysteries. So when asked a question about, a particular kind of material, I think it was a lot of fun to look at it, and to me it was just right there in front of me, and I was able to pick it out and understand even the inferences within the text. Like I said, reading and comprehension, grammar also, because grammar is just, I think, the spoken English, the right and wrong ways to present something. What helped me understand grammar was basically just through reading a lot, and then reading different kinds of materials. Now, not just novels. It's good to read and understand a good story, enjoy a good story, but also informative texts. Like I said, we had a lot of newspapers and magazines lying around. We had encyclopedias lying around. So being exposed to different kinds of material also helped one understand the aspects of grammar. And my parents listened to the news a lot and documentaries, so that helped us a lot. Lexis and structure, I can never forget that. It was always confusing for me, and it still remains confusing because to me it was like trying to teach a person who had never spoken English the different ways or formulas to get around it, the way the English language is structured. But when you're coming from a place where you think you already know it, then why go through all those different conjugations of verbs and definitions of what's a verb, what's a noun, what's an adjective? Why do I need to know all that? So that was really hard for me to understand. I cannot say I've quite mastered it yet. It was just a lot of studying. I remember even writing my GRE. The English part of it was harder for me. The comprehension part of it, especially as the structure of the exam, it's an intelligence system. So it gauges how well you're doing, and based on your correct responses increases the complexity of the exam. That was quite challenging. There were a lot of big new words that I had to learn, and different ways that they were presented that were quite challenging. So what helped me was just a lot of practice, exposing myself to so many different kinds of texts and questions around them. And trying to learn new words on the go. To a certain extent, yes. And also because being a graduate student, you just have to write. And there are certain standards standards of language that one has to keep up to, even in writing for journals and conferences, professional writing. Also on the job, when one has to write reports or to create documents that others would study and use, I think learning those aspects of the English language has helped me quite a bit, especially in structuring sentences. Recently, I was tasked with having to write contract language for construction projects. So I think a knowledge of the structure and how to present one's intentions correctly in English, that helped me a lot, and is still helping me on the job. I think everyone needs to master, I would say, the English language, if that applies to you, because anywhere you go, there are different standards, but then the way you present yourself and the quality of writing or speech that one presents definitely is a way of gauging the quality of a person. And so whatever job you're in, if you're searching for a job, if you're searching for admission, whatever it is you want in life, it certainly helps if you can present your ideas clearly. A lot of practice of, I would say again, the structure of English language, phrases and clauses. I remember having to learn that, and that helps one because where different places that you go, people have different ways of presenting, their ideas. Some of them, there are certain phrases that, unless you're exposed to a high quality or standard of readership or a broad aspect of reading, you would not be able to understand what people are saying. And especially as we're in a global society now, we're constantly being exposed to other cultures. So I think it's important to have that broad exposure to material, and even the traditional phrases and clauses that you would learn in school, they do apply. There's some phrases that are like Latin phrases. which in society, if you go out on the job, people say things, and I think your ability to understand would further improve your reputation. I just remember one of my teachers because she was so much fun. I think it's important for teachers to present the English language material in an interesting way and to engage the students. Otherwise, it could appear to be just this boring drone of a lot going on. But I had one teacher that inspired me. She was West Indian. She was just engaging and fun, and because she came down to our level and spoke with us, like equals, and she was always happy. She had interesting stories and interesting ways to present the material. That made English fun for me. I think she's the only teacher I can even remember. She engaged us. Yeah. Being engaged and inspired by a teacher, an instructor, anyone around you who makes you more interested in the material, makes you see it in a different way. Also listening, watching. It's a digital society these days. There's a lot of ways one can be exposed to the English language. But I think exposing oneself to quality material is the key. There's a whole lot of things you can watch online. There's a whole lot of things you can watch on TV. But even in improving oneself, I think documentaries have helped me a lot. Now, quality documentaries. I love National Geographic. I love science and nature documentaries. Because why I say quality material is because there is so much online these days that would not improve one's English. People express themselves in different ways and not necessarily according to the proper standard. So I would say it's important to watch what one is exposed to. So even with multimedia materials, I think a good quality of resources would help one to improve their English. Even listening to the news. The English textbooks were helpful. They were the only resources we had then, so that was all we had. They did help to a certain extent, but I would not rely on them completely. I think they serve more as a backup for other exposure that one has to the English language. They help as a backup structure to help you think through what you have already been exposed to. So like I said, a good quality of material, broad resources, broad reading resources, and good multimedia experiences can help. And then the textbook would kind of back up and help one think through and understand certain aspects, teach one to probably how to read for different purposes and how to comprehend text and how to structure speech and written language. I only used it when I needed to. Well, if one had an assignment and you needed to understand, if there were different examples in the textbooks, definitely. But it wasn't something that I would just pick up and read because I wanted to understand certain aspects of English language. So what made me use my textbooks was when I had assignments or probably exams, or sometimes to look up a phrase. Reading a lot. Practically anything I could lay my hands on. Yes, it's good to read broadly, not just to read novels, not just to read text messages or Facebook, which is the context in which it is today. Not just to read any kind of article online, because some articles are badly written or are written in English language that is not quite up to standard. Exposing oneself to good quality material is key. When you read a lot, I think it would be easier to grasp aspects of the English language. I mean, you may not need to know certain aspects of structure, but just by looking at it, reading through English or hearing it, one can kind of grasp and know how it's supposed to sound and how things are supposed to go together. Use whatever you have, but you have to gauge the quality as well, because there's a lot of stuff out there now that can lead you astray. In a situation where one doesn't have access to so many resources, you have to listen well in class, use your textbooks, ask a lot of questions, and then within your learning community, there would be one or two people that stand out who you can communicate with, go up to them, ask them questions, and learn from them. Because definitely, even when we don't have any material resources, people are our greatest resources. And I believe within a school environment, there will be one or two people that stand out that could be mentors. Read, keep reading, and watch the quality of what you expose yourself to. Thank you.